In front of a packed Senate hearing in Texas, Public Safety Director Steve McCraw publicly shared his opinion on the decisions made in that massacre at Robb Elementary in Uvalde.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure and antithetical to everything we've learned over the last 2 decades since the Columbine massacre.
It's time, folks, for the Profiling Evil Weekly Crime Recap. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Crime Recap on Profiling Evil. Now as we get started, take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. You know, just a few days ago I talked with Vinnie Politan on Court TV about the Tristan Bailey homicide case. Do you remember that one? 13-year-old Tristan Bailey stabbed 114 times. And now the alleged killer's court appearance. I want to start with this clip from WJXT4.
15-year-old Aiden Fucci walked into a St. Johns County courtroom today shackled. He stood next to his public defender for the brief hearing. She said deposition dates are set for this summer and the November trial date is still on. Tristan Bailey's family was also there in the gallery, all wearing aqua, Tristan's favorite color. Fucci is charged with murdering Bailey on Mother's Day last year. Her body was found in a wooded area of Durbin Crossing in St. Johns County, where both of the teenagers lived. On the right side of this video from Sky 4, you can see Fucci's home roped off with crime tape. According to court records, Fucci's girlfriend told an investigator he would hear voices that would tell him to kill people. Investigators also said he had a notebook that contained violent and satanic drawings. Fucci is charged as an adult, but he is not eligible for the death penalty. Last month, Bailey's friends and family held a vigil in her honor, marking 1 year since her death. Her family posted on the Tristan Bailey Strong Facebook page a couple days ago saying, "As we are preparing for another pretrial hearing on Tuesday, I can feel the stress and anxiety building, like a volcano waiting to erupt. The legal process is difficult for victims' families. That being said, we have faith and trust in Tristan's legal team. We know they are doing everything in their power." Fucci's mother, Crystal Smith, is charged with tampering with evidence in this case. Investigators say she washed blood from her son's jeans hours after the murder. That case is still making its way through the court system as well. I'm Tarek Minor, Channel 4, the local station.
Well, you might be asking yourself, like I am, how on earth can the defense continue to pursue a not guilty plea with all of the evidence that's mounting against him? I mean, the evidence includes physical, forensic, statements that were made by friends and to friends, admissions made by the alleged killer himself. Those admissions just don't fit the physical evidence very well, in my opinion. You know, he talks about this push where she hits her head on the rock. That's a long ways from 114 stab wounds that this child suffered. Just over a year's passed since Tristan's body was recovered on that Mother's Day morning. Fucci, along with his mother, were arrested. Now, his public defender seems to be working diligently to defend her client, telling the judge that she has 70 to 80 more depositions to get through before he can go to trial in November. Fucci only glanced at Bailey's family during the courtroom. They were filling that courtroom gallery wearing aqua, Tristan's favorite color. As Vinny and I talked about the case, he questioned Fucci's changing stories. Let's listen to that exchange, and then I want to know what you think about this case.
Aiden Fucci detained, but he's going to be charged as an adult. 14 years old, charged with the murder of Tristan Bailey, 13-year-old neighbor, friend, classmate. It's incredibly tragic. I mean, it was a brutal murder. 114 stab wounds. Here's a part of the incident report. The defendants, some admissions that he allegedly made, Aiden Fucci. The defendant's story changed several times, but ultimately made several admissions. Admitted to being with the victim. Admitted to walking north along North Durbin Parkway, which is significant. There's video. The defendant admitted to engaging in an argument with the victim in which he forcefully pushed the victim to the ground, striking her head. Let me bring in our guests, our investigators joining us tonight in Atlanta, Georgia, former special agent in charge of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Trebor Randall. In Murray, Utah, forensic specialist with Cold Case Solutions and Resources, Francine Bardot is with us. And in Washington, D.C., sometimes he's in Utah, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. Great to see everyone tonight. Mike, I want to start with you. I know you've done a lot with this on your podcast. Tell me about the defendant changing his story and having this story about pushing the victim. Something, it's 114 stab wounds. This pushing the victim to the ground and striking her head doesn't make sense to me. He's changing his stories. None of this is good for this defendant.
It's going to be really interesting to hear the investigators lay out the timeline of these stories that Fucci delivers. And is he delivering stories that are constantly trying to fix the problems in previous stories? I think this one's going to really boil down to looking at what the fantasy process was going on before all of this happened. We certainly know that there is going to be evidence presented that talks about some of his written manifestos of how he's thinking, what his fantasies are, what he's talking to friends about, and that's going to be a huge piece of this one, I think, Vinny. And then, of course, the fact that he's actually uttering that violence is in part of his thought processes, whether he is truly hearing voices or not. The thing that's going to be really important, in my opinion, beyond the moment that this homicide occurs, is everything that he does to try to avoid detection, getting rid of the weapon, taking the shoes off, taking time to get home, the efforts that went into trying to avoid detection. And I think all of that's going to play out against him. But it really, in my opinion, boils down to the behaviors in this case, because I think they've got the physical evidence. So here's what we have to look forward to. In my opinion, Fucci's defense will undoubtedly work to get their client the best deal he can. That's the system. It's the way it should happen. Well, if he's convicted, he's going to sit in prison for at least 25 years until he can request parole, which is allowed in Florida. Now, unless he's found insane, that's when things change. If he's convicted, he's going to sit in prison for at least 25 years until he can request parole. Now, in the state of Florida, he can do that. Now, that's unless he's found insane. It looks to me like he had his act together, though, when he appeared last week. But don't forget that jailhouse camera appearance shortly after his arrest. You remember that? The time when he acted like he was hearing voices? Let's watch this.
What's going on? I don't want you demons. I don't want you demons take my soul. You demons want to take my soul away. I don't let you demons steal my soul. I don't know what's going on. What am I? I see you. What's going on? What you got going on? Why am I here? I just want to talk to my mom and dad. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
Well, for all we know, he could have been hearing voices. Did you notice the guy in the background, though? I want you to watch that video again. I'm going to play it right here while I'm talking. I wonder if that guy's hearing voices, too. Maybe the entire jailhouse is filled with ghosts. Well, what are your thoughts, folks? Is Aiden Fucci going to use the mental illness defense? Or is he going to stick with the admission that he simply pushed Tristan Bailey to the ground and she hit her head? In my book, it doesn't explain 114 stab wounds or the need his mother would have to wash his jeans, something that police say in public and social events that left blood residue in the drain traps. Hey, we'll enter your comments down below and tell me what you're thinking on this one. There are so many cases out there, and I just wanted to make sure we don't forget this one. We're not forgetting, and we're going to keep following it. Now, let's take a moment and talk about the search warrant that was conducted in the Harmony Montgomery case last week. Investigators searched a home where Harmony Montgomery, her father, and his girlfriend, her stepmother, whatever that situation is, lived. Now, the thing that's got everybody talking in the news is what they removed from the apartment at the search. Keep in mind, Harmony and her family haven't lived there for 2.5 years, but somehow law enforcement convinced a judge that they needed to search inside. I can't begin to emphasize how important this is, folks. Think about it. Getting a search warrant is difficult at best. Getting one 2.5 years later to search for physical evidence is tougher than moving mountains, in my opinion. Now, I don't know if the investigators hit pay dirt or not, but they were seen removing a refrigerator, flooring, and there's other physical and forensic evidence. I want to take a moment and watch this video from WCVB, Channel 5 in Boston.
This is a very large scene here on Union Street. Investigators have been here for most of the day, and they are expected to be here into the evening. They removed several items from an apartment building labeled an evidence, but most notably a refrigerator was removed. It is all part of a quest for answers about Harmony, and her mother says she is hoping whatever evidence is found will lead to justice. A search scene spanning an entire block on Union Street. The FBI and Manchester police zeroing in on an apartment building related to the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery. The girl was last seen in 2019 when she was 5 years old. Her father, Adam, and stepmother, Kayla, once lived in this apartment, bringing investigators here today.
Trying to remain hopeful. I mean, it looks horrible, but that's all we can do is remain hopeful. That's it. Just hope that they figure out what happened.
In one development, investigators removed a refrigerator from the apartment building and wrapped the unit in plastic. It was then loaded onto a truck. Orange biohazard labels attached. Other items also marked evidence were loaded up as well.
Hopefully we can find some type of evidence because, you know, Harmony needs justice.
Harmony's mother says the wait for answers about her daughter's fate is agonizing.
Regardless of the outcome, I'm still going to bring her home. I'm still going to fight for justice.
Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery, is behind bars on charges that he abused a girl. Her stepmother, Kayla, is out on bail for perjury and other charges related to the girl's disappearance. So there is still a lot of activity here on Union Street, and again, we expect investigators to be here into the evening. According to the Attorney General's office here in New Hampshire, which is in charge of the investigation into Harmony's disappearance, well, they will not say what evidence was found here or how it relates to the search for Harmony.
The Manchester Police Department spent 2 days at the apartment, but they won't disclose what they found in the search. It's the right thing to do. It was the new renter who lived in that apartment where the police ripped up the floors and everything else that talked about it. He said they ripped up a closet in a bedroom. They tore up carpet. They tore up the floorboards. They cut a hole in the ceiling over a bathtub access in order to get to the pipes where they could look for more evidence. They took off doorknobs and shower faucets. Clearly, law enforcement was looking for DNA in the drains and traps. Police even searched the sewer system connected to the home and into the street. Now think about this again. With 24 to 30 months between the time of the search and the last time the family was known to be living in the residence, this is going to be really interesting to see how they bring this together and tie that huge gap. The only charges thus far in the case have had nothing to do with Harmony's disappearance, but potentially have everything to do with what could become a homicide charge. Remember Harmony's father, Adam Montgomery. He was arrested in January and charged with felony second-degree assault, child endangerment charges, and later had a gun charge added to that. Now, Montgomery's estranged wife was charged with 2 felony counts of perjury for lying to a grand jury about where she was when Harmony disappeared. She's also been arrested on gun charges and for allegedly collecting food stamps and other public benefits when Harmony was missing. Now, here's why I think an eventual homicide charge might get filed in this case. Harmony's biological mother told a news agency this week that she's losing hope that she'll see her daughter ever again. She said, quote, "This is no longer a rescue mission. It's not a missing person anymore. I know in my heart it's going to switch from a missing persons case to a homicide. It's really a waiting right now," close quote. Now, I can't imagine that she knows the inner workings of what police are doing, but she also said, quote, "I was told things are going to get really intense in the next few weeks to come. A lot is going to happen," close quote. Well, if true, this is big news in the case, and we may finally learn what happened to Harmony Montgomery. So, what do you think the news is going to be? And I want you to put your answers down below and take time to read and respond to the comments of other people. I'm going to be reading them, and I hope you will too. But for now, let's pause and go down to Florida and talk about the Gabby Petito case. It's been a long time since we chatted about this, but a Sarasota, Florida judge listened to lawyers who represented the parents of Gabby Petito and also the parents of Brian Laundrie, who argued whether the Petito's family lawsuit against the Laundries should be dismissed or heard. Now, if you remember, Gabby Petito was murdered last year, and social media reports alleged that she was killed by her boyfriend, who confessed to it in a document he left in the park where his body was found. What we do know is that her body was recovered in the Grand Teton National Park just after Brian Laundrie drove Gabby's van back to Florida alone. The Petitos are suing the Laundries for failure to disclose that Gabby was killed or where they could find her body. The Laundrie attorney argues, though, that the law doesn't oblige them to disclose any information, that the couple had a First Amendment right not to speak. I watched the proceedings online and I was impressed. I mean, there were like 15,000+ people who were viewing the live stream of this one. This case is not going away. Now, those who were chatting were not complimentary of the Laundrie family or their attorney, and many expressed appreciation for the judge, who seemed to be kind of leaning toward the Petito side of the lawsuit. The Petito attorney alleged that the Laundries knew that Gabby was dead on August 28th. All the while, the Petito family was desperately reaching out to them and hoping to get answers. Instead, the Laundries took their son on vacation, according to the attorney. Now, their attorney argues that the First Amendment protections don't apply in this case. The lawsuit claims that the Petitos suffered intentional emotional stress, stating, quote, "While Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt were desperately searching for information concerning their daughter, Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie were keeping the whereabouts of Brian Laundrie secret, and it's believed they were making arrangements for him to leave the country," close quote. Well, at the end of the day, ABC News reported the judge told lawyers for both sides that he's going to make a decision of whether he keeps the case on the books or dismisses it in the next few weeks. If you'd like, you can read the entire lawsuit by clicking on the link in the description area down below. And another big thing happened in regard to the Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Department of Public Safety Director Steve McCraw told a Texas State Senate committee meeting Tuesday that law enforcement's response to the Uvalde shooting was a, quote, "abject failure," close quote. He continued by saying police could have stopped the shooter at Robb Elementary School 3 minutes after arriving, were it not for indecisiveness of the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children. The director doesn't pull any punches, and at relatively the same time this testimony was occurring, I found myself bouncing over to watch a video of the mayor of Uvalde and the city council reacting to their community about the lack of information they've received from the state. And the state's laying it all out in front of the Senate. The city's saying they still don't know what's going on. In an interesting twist, you'll remember that police chief who made those decisions that everybody's questioning also had recently won a city council seat in the Uvalde City Council. He wasn't in attendance for this meeting, and there were questions about whether he would be voted off of the council by other council members because he's been an absentee member. I think you might want to watch that one to see, but I don't believe that this guy's going to be serving on the city council. Now, let's go back and talk about the Senate hearing, though. I do think Director McCraw's comment about the ethics of the case was spellbinding.
3 minutes after the subject entered the West Building, there was a sufficient number of armed officers wearing body armor to isolate, distract, and neutralize the subject. The only thing stopping a hallway of dedicated officers from entering room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
He said something that really captured my attention. He said, quote, "The officers had weapons. The children had none. The officers had body armor. The children had none. The officers had training. The suspect in this case, had none. 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 8 seconds. That's how long those children waited, and the teachers waited in room 111 to be rescued." Now, remember, there was testimony and videos out that the school district chief of police determined that it wasn't the right time to go in, that the case was de-escalating, that the doors to the classroom were locked, and that they needed to get keys to unlock those doors. Well, Director McCraw contradicted those comments and revealed some really disappointing facts that I'm not going to necessarily explore in this crime recap, but I hope the mystery of what I'm talking about will intrigue you enough that you might go back and watch his entire testimony. Now, put down your comments below. I'm going to be reading over those, and I hope that you'll also take time to read the comments from other viewers. But before I leave this discussion, I want to pause and recognize a Uvalde school police officer, Ruben Ruiz. His wife, Eva Morales, was a teacher killed in the school. Eva called her husband, the police officer, and told him that she'd been shot and she was dying. The officer tried to ignore all the orders to advance and eventually was forcibly stopped by other officers. His weapon was taken away and he was escorted off the scene. Well, his wife, another teacher, and all of those children died in an event that Director McCraw pointed out could have been resolved in 3 minutes, not an hour and 14 minutes and 8 seconds. And since I'm speaking about that locked door, here's the last bombshell that Director McCraw dropped. When he testified, the door had never been locked. Now, I don't think I'll ever forget the director commenting that there was no evidence of law enforcement ever even trying the classroom door. More importantly, McCraw stated, "I don't believe, based on the information we have right now, that the door was ever secured. He," speaking of the shooter, "didn't have a key and he couldn't lock the door from the inside." What a tragedy. Now, a lot of you are asking questions about Dillon Rounds. This is a case that has some really interesting twists and turns, and the timeline by the family and that discussed by law enforcement have been interesting to see the differences and where it's starting to come together. I'm going to be looking closer at this case in the coming days, but I wanted to just touch on that and the fact that there are issues in this case that are really troubling. Issues like the treatment of potential evidence at the scene, the truck, or the boots. And were those boots covered with oil? Were they covered with animal blood? Or was it human blood? Or paint? But then, why did they sit in the back of a police car for 7 days. Now, I want to also look into what Dillon's public, private, and secret personas were. Because again, there's a kid that we're knowing now publicly. There was a private side to him. And in all of us, and I think in this case, we're going to find there were some secret sides to this young man. Do they make a difference? Do they justify being murdered? Absolutely not. And then, of course, what about the drama, the noise that was created by that private investigator who was so abusive online? I just still can't get over it. It's the same private investigator I had trouble with in the Jed Hall case, where I disagreed with his beliefs and he absolutely disagreed with mine. Luckily, ours were proven accurate, and this young man's body was recovered. And you go back and watch that in the Jed Hall case where I worked with Adventures with Purpose. But the question on that thing was, should he have been involved? Did the family do the right thing in getting rid of him? And are there some things that he uncovered that still need to be ferreted out? Whether his delivery was crummy or not. And then finally, are police on track, or did they just wait too long to get serious about this case? I want to know what your thoughts are on all of these cases, folks, and I'm going to be watching for your answers down below. I hope you'll interact with each other too on these things. And please hit that like and subscribe button and share Profiling Evil with your contacts. Please consider joining our channel memberships. My favorite's the Academy level, where you get all kinds of really cool information not available in other places. And remember, you can find Profiling Evil on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, you can get Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, check us out on the World Wide Web at profilingevil.com. I hope you'll go there and sign up for the B.O.L.O, our newsletter. We're going to be sending out some new information on that in the coming weeks. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.